Hello everyone, I'm Ann Dale here at my sewing room in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Happy to have you with me. Today we're going to start Digital Dealer Exclusives month number 3, and that's the Embroidery Hoop Stitch Sampler. I will walk us first through the supply list and a few notations, and then we'll start stitching. The project calls for a few different stabilizers this time. One of them is a medium cutaway. The other is a fusible backing. It's lovely, lightweight, woven fusible. And a little bit of wash-away topping. Now, wash-away topping is a clear film-like product. We like to keep it in a plastic bag. It doesn't dry out. I'll grab you some of that in a moment. Now, as you can see on the table, I have a few more things. First, we have our embroidery thread colors. In no particular order, we have a dark gray, dark blue, light blue. Now, in my sample, it called for a teal, and I actually used this blue here. You can sub out any of these colors at any time to make yourself happy. It all depends on the colors you want to see. There's nothing that says that this butterfly could not be orange, that these patches couldn't be pink. This is kind of a red, so red, not burgundy. Whatever you like. This red heart could be pink. This orange flower could be yellow. This pink flower could be lavender. Whatever you would like to see. But I'm walking you through what we chose as our colors. Dark green, light green, burgundy. In this case, this was our darkest pink and this was our lightest pink, and we all know there's darker pinks in this and lighter pinks than that. And we had a dark orange and light orange, which again could be two entirely different oranges. Now, the most important thing this time will be water-soluble bobbin. We've got our handy-dandy Kimberbell Toolset, Prewound white bobbin, our handy-dandy stiletto, just in case, nice large 8-inch European shears. Love these French Europeans. They are beautifully weighted, so lovely and sharp. And we've got a bonus exercise for you in this program. We'll have Leah join us and walk us through how to use the SVG files that were included with this program. I'll let you in on that when it's time, and we'll have Leah give us an extra bonus demo on how to use the SVG files that were so kindly provided in this exercise. Alrighty, so let's talk a minute about this. This one's similar to the picture. I use slightly different blue wings. I use slightly different solids in the piecing. This little sampler hoop is tons of fun and make a sweet addition to the wall in your sewing room. Machine embroidery has my heart. The heart is been chenilled. It's sweetly labeled for us. The butterfly is an applique. The little sewing machine is Redwork. Piecing in the hoop, decorative stitches in the hoop, and Fringe. Fringe is a bucket of fun. I love that. But that Fringe requires a water-soluble bobbin thread. So we'll talk more about that in use. So let's get started. I'm going to take all of my thread and my hooped stabilizer to the machine. But just before I do that, I'm going to pop this one open for you. I'm just going to reveal the backside. Right now it's a huge mess, but I left it this way on purpose. I wanted you to see that you get a couple different files this month. One of the files is for a full hooping. So if you have an embroidery machine that can take a full 8 inches or so wide, then you can stitch this all in one pass. Now that's pretty simple for those of us who've been embroidering for a while. We hoop this, we stitch through the entire thing. For the recorded portion of the class, I am using the 5x7 hoop, and I'm going to show you how Kimberbell does their multi-hooping. This particular one here, if you could drop into the shop, this one I did on a medium weight cutaway, but with sticky. I love when I can push my fabric in there and it doesn't move while I'm stitching, thereby eliminating opportunity for puckering. So I just wanted you to see that this was still in its stabilizer and that it had been a singular hooping. Yeah. And I used the sticky back, made me happy. I also tried a little bit something else. Although the project called for the Fusible Woven stabilizer, just to give that cotton a little bit of oomph. In my original one, here's my little kit cut and ready to go. I actually used the Fusible fleece in place of the Fusible Woven. Now, before we actually head to the machine, we've got one bit of prep. So bear with me and we will have that little bit of prep. What we need to do is have our background, which I've chosen with kind of a soft, solid, it's just an off pink. And I need to fuse either the Fusible Woven, or if you want to try what I tried in my first one, which was a piece of Fusible fleece. It's this is a much lighter one. There's two products out there called Fuse and Fleece or Fusible Fleece. This is Fuse and Fleece, which is a very soft, light batting. Sometimes has been referred to as embroidery batting. Something a little lighter. That was not called for in the Kimberbell supply list, but it's certainly an option that I like to use. It gives a slight bit of depth to stitches like this, and this looks a little more quilted, has a little bit of depth, can look a little bit richer. I often use it in tops on pillows. Just give quilted pillows or embroidered pillow tops. That little bit of fleece helps give that just a nice luxury look. So let me fuse something to a background and I'll meet you at the sewing machine. I'm going to give you one little tip about fusing before we get to that sewing machine there. All right, a small tip here, everyone. When you're putting a fusible onto a piece of fabric that's just a simple square like this, I like to cut the fusible about 1/4 inch smaller. So if that had been a 10-inch square, the fusible would have been 9 3/4. If it was 8, it would have been 7 3/4. I just take a 1/4 inch smaller, and that gives me just a wee bit of an 8-inch, or pardon me, an 1/8 of an inch lip all the way around, so I don't get fusible web on my iron, or if I choose to press from this side, I don't make a mess. If it's bigger this way and you press around the edges, you'll stick your fusible and your piece to your ironing board. If we go up this way and the fusible's wider, you'll end up with it on the bottom of your iron. All of those things are unnecessary opportunities to clean. Let's avoid that. So I've given this a nice solid press. Do follow the instructions that are included with your fusible products so that you get permanent adhesion and you don't get that weird bubbling that happens in the middle. There we go. Now, the most important thing is to let that cool. If you try to move it while it's still warm, you can disrupt the adhesion. So give that a minute, let it cool. I will meet you over at the sewing machine and get started on the stitch out. I have a 5x7 hoop, as I said, and we are going to load in part A of the Kimberbell design. This will be done in 2 different hoopings and in Kimberbell way. So we'll get started with that. I just have a simple pre-wound white bobbin in there. Currently there is white in the top, which I think will be okay for us today. All right, so our first stitch out here doesn't suggest a particular color. I already had white in the machine, probably from my last project, so let's just start with that. So it will be a little bit difficult to see on screen, but that first stitch out is just simply a little bit of crosshairs. I don't know, maybe let's try. Yeah, it's not very visible, but there's a little X here. And that little crosshair is going to help us center our fabric. So when we go to the multi-hoop section of the project after. Now, we'll just fold our fabric up into quarters. So simply into quarters. Half, half. And then this will allow us to place the center of our fabric where the center of the design will be later. It isn't the center of the hoop, that is correct. So we just set that there. We're going to open this out. So we'll take it about halfway, which is across that horizontal line there, and then we'll bring the top down. Just do this very gently so you don't disrupt your center, which is just currently pressed in. Right now you may like to add some tape top and bottom to have that hold in place for you and to not put your fingers in any danger. You want to remember, keep your fingers out of the hoop. It's very hurtful if you get yourself caught, so I'm just going to apply a little tape top and bottom. Just to hold that, keep my fingers out of the way. Certainly don't want to get knocked by the needle. Alrighty, so rehoop that. Got the bulk of the excess fabric is to the left of the machine. And our first color stitch out is a basting stitch. I'm going to go ahead with the white that was already on my machine. Or the Kimberbell recommendation on color there is the dark gray. You might appreciate that for viewing. So let's give the dark gray a whirl, shall we? If you happen to be using a black background, you might not be able to see that later. Remember, all the colors are suggestions And you may choose alternate colors at any time, because of course you may or may not have the exact same fabrics at your disposal, or maybe you have a color theme in your sewing room that you'd like to carry on, and you need brighter jewel tones, maybe happy pastels, whatever makes you happy. All right, so dark gray it is, color number 2. And technically speaking, this is the bottom half of the circle. Now, the next part here isn't really described for a color, so you may choose to use whatever makes you happy. I think that I'm going to go with whiter. These are my pieces that I've chosen for the piecing in the hoop. So I think I'm going to switch back out to white. I'd like to have something a little lighter under these colors. They're quite soft. Or maybe, you know, like our typical quilt piecing, something more neutral, beige or gray, but I'm going to go back and use the white. Almost everybody has white embroidery thread at their disposal, and I know it won't show through the fabrics that I've chosen. All right, so color number 3. Now in the opening supply list, there was no mention of tape. I apologize for that. Also, this is one of those moments when a glue stick might be your friend, knowing where we're heading here. We've got the base stitched out of the flying geese, and we're going to put the fabric for the lower geese there. And I'm going to use this colored glue because I know that it's water soluble. I'm going to center that patch on the top. It dries clear, so that blue won't show, but it does nicely show you where you put your glue down on it. It's just an option. Otherwise, do put a piece of tape on each end there just to keep that from shifting while we're stitching. So that's the upper arm of our flying geese. I'm just going to go in and trim that off. Then we have to decide which the side of the geese we're going to use. I'm going to use that coral pink. And we'll take that piece and we'll center it on that line. And we wouldn't glue this one in place because that would be incorrect, because this is now a stitch and flip. So that stitch and flip, I'm just going to tape it across this end. We're going to stitch on this other side that we just lined the raw edges up together. This is color step number 5, still using white. Oof. Almost missed it down here. Gotta center a little better. But I think I'm safe for the moment. So now, I believe that I'm going to survive this. I guess we'll find out. So I'm just going to finger press that back, and I'm going to use the tape just to keep that in place. Color step number 6. If you like, you can press these with an iron if you have a small, what I like to call hoop iron, one of the little palm irons. Fits nicely in there. Okay, our next trim is on that line that we just stitched through there. Trim evenly on that stitch line there. A little bit of so do a better job of centering this time. The tape on there to hold that in place. It's color step number 7. Yeah, we're just going to flip that back, give it a little finger press. We've got some interesting wooden tools, plastic tools to help press in there, but just press on a firm surface with your fingernail and things are quite nicely flat. Color step number 8. You can see there's a nice stitch across the top there. So we're moving from the lower flying geese to the upper flying geese. Just take that out so I can turn it at a nice easy angle for stitching. And you don't want to cut anything that's not directly related to that line. So don't go crazy and go down the sides here. Not till you know for sure where they belong. All right, so trim those pieces out. The flying geese center for this particular project is that sweet little floral. So we're going to put that in place. And we're going to mind our centering. I'm going to put the raw edge on the line that we just stitched. A little bit of tape to keep it from moving. Color step 9. Okay, so we'll take that out. Remove that tape there. Give that a nice finger press. Could put a little blob of glue under there because we know that this belongs there, but I have this handy dandy piece of tape just waiting to be used. Put that on there. And color step 10. There we go. We have a new line to trim. And we just carefully, when you're trimming where there's no stitching, just carry on typically through the line that you're working, and that should be safe. The good news is Kimberbell has given us generous cutting directions for all of these pieces. So the next piece is centered here. We're going with different color on the other. You could use the same if you like. This is definitely your project, your choice. You can just grab a new piece of tape. Just put that in a optimum spot so that green doesn't move while I'm stitching. Okay, so move the tape, flip that back on it, and give ourselves a little space there. If you're not getting a good press, you could tape that down so it doesn't flip up while you're stitching. Good news is if anything goes wrong on these little stitches, they're just simple straight stitches, not a nightmare to trim out. So I'm just going to trim. Out of the way. And our final little piece centered on this side. Take down on the bottom here, centered on that stitch line. All right, now I'm just going to remove the tape here. I'm going to give a little press there. I'm going to tape that edge, keeping that up and straight. There we go. Now, this is where Kimberbell is requesting our first piece, a wash away topping. I'm just going to grab that for us. And what it's going to do is it's just going to manage all of these little flips and lips. We don't want to get those caught under the foot. We could go in and tape that whole thing down, but it'd be a bit of a mess. Okay, it's a little hard to see. It's clear. We want to tape that wash away topping over top of the entire project. Don't want that to lift and get caught on the foot. Typically doesn't hurt the project or anything, but what will happen is you can yank your entire design out of alignment. So put a little bit of tape at the bottom to hold that, a little bit of tape at the top to hold that. You could put some down the side here. Maybe I'll repurpose that here. And I think I'll repurpose that one over here. Just to be sure. If you accidentally stitch through the tape, no problem. The tape is meant to be stitched through and still be removed. Okay, so color step number 14, that's just going to give us a tack down line. Okay, so that little line is going to also tell us where to trim everything. So we're going to take all that tape and the stabilizer off. I find that if you tear towards the stitching, support the project with your finger, you won't distort the stitches because they're quite delicate in this bit because they are just a straight stitch. Okay. Just lift up that corner there, pull that out. Now this, since this block isn't going into a quilt, we're going to just trim all of the excess off here. And there's a nice wide satin stitch that's going to come. A little thick up there. The scissors don't like it. There we go. If you're having any trouble trimming, there's multiple layers of fabric, so dive in, catch a single layer, trim it off. I'm trimming quite closely to that stitch line. Now in the instructions, the color, the next color there is the dark blue. If that's not going to suit you, pick one of the other colors. I think this is such a dainty light colored block. Maybe navy isn't the one I want on here. I already have navy on the other block. So I think I'm going to be a rebel right now, right here, and I am going to use white. Or maybe coral. What do you think? Color step 15, I'm jumping the rules and I'm using white. Our little flying geese block is completed. Now our next little bit here is a little sewing machine. It's called Redwork, typically, as the name suggests, done in red. Kimberbell is suggesting a burgundy. We could do a burgundy there, or if you prefer, could do more red, or we could call ours blackwork and do in black. I think in this instance I'm going to go with the burgundy. I think it'll look nice next to that block. This will be color step number 16. All right, so completed the Redwork, little Redwork sewing machine there. We're on color step number 17, and the color suggested is that dark gray that I started with here. Now, we're going to be stitching out the word piecing just next to here and over here just underneath Redwork. Sometimes micro letters are not very happy to be stitched down. I'm going to just stitch through these, but I'm going to tell you some of the special instructions that I have found useful. Sometimes that micro lettering is so little that having bobbin the same color is helpful. Sometimes that water-soluble stabilizer we had earlier can be quite useful. I think what I might do is put a little bit of that in place. And if you're having any tension issues, you might want to consider matching bobbin here. Just going to put a little piece of tape in there so I'm not tempted to reach in and help that. If it buckles up or bunches up under your stitching, don't worry, it's a water soluble that is completely removed. So I'm going to put a little bit of tape here at the bottom. A little bit of tape over here on the side. Let's see what we get. Color step 17. Yeah, I'm having a bit of bobbin show through there. My machine has said that I need to recheck my threading, which is great. I'm going to just restart that color. We didn't get very far, but the machine's not happy about the threading. I'm going to give it another try here. I can see the tail from earlier. I'm just going to go in and take that down. See if I can. If those stitches are super loose, now would be the time to pick them out. But they seem reasonably solid, so I'm just going to stitch over them after I thread my needle. There we go. I have stopped my machine. I'm going to do a little experiment. When I look closely at these little letters, I have a high contrast top and bobbin, which is not particularly your friend in microlettering. Microlettering has its own unique issues. So I have dark gray on top and I have white in the bobbin, and sometimes microletters are a little tough to get nice. I'm actually going to switch out that white bobbin for a dark bobbin, either dark gray or in this case I believe what I have there is a black. I'm going to put that in for the next word and remove that bit of water soluble. I'm going to land it on this side here. In the location that that word is going to land, which is just under the bottom of the machine here. And I'm going to switch out to the dark bobbin. Again, move the water soluble over there. And we'll see if this looks a little better than the other. We'll have a look at that in a minute. We've got last color 18 out of 18. It's asked us to put a very visible color into the upper. We have that dark gray in, so I'm going to leave that in. That dark gray is going to stitch out what are called registration marks. Now these are going to be important in rehooping. There we go. So that completes the first hooping. And I can see, I'm not sure how well you can see on the camera, and maybe from 10 feet away, you can't be bothered with what you see, but I can see close here now. The Redwork is much nicer looking, cleaner looking than piecing. So having that dark bobbin with a dark upper thread really helps. I believe in topping in these situations. If you don't get all of the topping pulled out here with just simple pull removal. You can use a wet Q-tip to wash that out. It's also a little nicer to trim those tails if the topping is still in place. So over here, with that topping still in place, there's these little teeny tiny jump stitches, and you can get under there with these tiny tipped scissors. They drive me crazy. I gotta trim them out. But there are other people in the world who don't see them, doesn't bother them, and on their pieces they leave them. But I like to remove them, and removing them with the topping in place is so much easier because it protects the fabric underneath from you and your little scissors, and allows you to get in a nice tight trim there. So I leave that topping in there till I get them out. And that just makes me a happy embroiderer. All right, so there's our little registration marks. They're just little elbows here and here. Okay, here we are back at the cutting table. We have the bottom half of our hoop stitched out, if you recall from the beginning. We have the Redwork machine, the piecing, Redwork, and the word piecing embroidered out, and now we're going to rehoop and we'll complete the rest of this. So this is the part where a lot of people get quite nervous. So we'll take this out of the hoop. We'll remove that tape from earlier. We're going to trim away the excess stabilizer here. Now, one thing we can suggest that might make things cleaner at the end of the day is if we had had a much larger piece of stabilizer here and here, and then we would have just moved this over. Or you can have two pieces of stabilizer. Depends on what you have available. So I'm going to rehoop another piece. If we had used a much larger piece, we could have hooped side by side here. And all this excess on the top. Okay. Now once we've got that stabilizer in there, we're ready to get started for the second half of this. I've got everything loaded to part B. Hoop in the machine. The very first stitch out here are the matching registration marks. So those are just simply stitched right into the stabilizer. Still got the dark thread on top and the dark thread in the bobbin. And make the next step much easier. Now there's something that wasn't on my supply list but is definitely on Kimberbell's. This is something you may not have seen or used in a long while, but just a proper old thumbtack. You remember them? We're going to need 2 of them for these registration marks. Welcome to the cutting table, where we're going to use a very unusual tool in embroidery, thumbtack. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the hoop, flip it over, and we're going to put that thumbtack right through that corner. Remember we stitched that little elbow? I'm putting it right in the corner. Now maybe if I remove the tails that make that a little messy looking. Bring that up to the camera for you. Just there, you can see that little elbow. The thumbtack is just coming out where the point is. So being careful not to distort the hooping. We're going to insert that right into that corner stitch there. I've got my two fingers underneath there, just supporting the stabilizer so that I don't push too hard and interrupt how that was hooped originally. A little bit of tape is going to be your friend here. So we'll grab that tape. What you just want to grab is a couple little squares. We're going to just gently put that on top of that. Again, no force. You don't want to push through that hooping. Just drop the tape right on top. No pushing. When you flip it over, you can see where the tape is, and you can just give a nice push now. They won't lift, move, or otherwise run away. Now we're at the front of the hoop with the join on that side. Now we're going to grab the piece we stitched earlier. And remember, we have those two little elbows there. And what we can do now is we're going to push those little elbows onto the thumbtacks with the previously stitched bits. Be a little easier, you can kind of see where those elbows are. Now, if you're not getting it exactly where you want it, just take your time. Get yourself in such a way you can see. Through that one. Got that right through there and there. The good news is in this is a very entry starter multi-hooping. It's fabulous. If this is your first time, the good news is none of these embroideries interact with these ones in such a way that they must have like a perfect join. They're close to each other, they're beside each other. But this is a great one to start with and a great practice piece to make sure that you have everything going the way you'd like it to. All right, so got that placed where I want in my hoop. Now, what we want to do is tape everything in place because we do have to remove these thumbtacks before we start stitching. Otherwise, we could have a pretty big trauma later. So whatever it takes now to get these. Got a little bit of tape up here. I'm going to put another piece down here, another piece up there. We don't want this to shift when we remove the thumbtacks, or we would have gone to all that trouble to get things placed, and then we would lose. Now remember, it's okay to press firmly when this is on a flat surface, but never from the back, because everything's sort of up in the air still. So here we go. Nicely taped. I'm going to jump to the back, and maybe those sweet teeny tiny tweezers we've got in our Kimberbell kit. We're going to grab that tape and remove that thumbtack. Same here. Get that tweezer under there. Take that tape out and then gently slip that thumbtack out. The other one stayed stuck to our tape, but 2 thumbtacks in, 2 thumbtacks out. All right, and I'm pretty sure I didn't disrupt that hooping in any way. Let's remove those black threads. I don't want those stitched in by accident. And away we go. And I'm all ready to do the other half of that hooping. So I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. I'm going to make a couple adjustments to the machine for the next part. I've got part B loaded in here. I'm going to switch out to a lighter bobbin, in this case white. Prewound, love them. If they work in your machine, you will learn to love them as well. I still have that dark gray in top. I'm going to leave that there. Our first stitch out is our half circle. So step color 2 is actually the circle for the hoop. Color step number 3 is a placement line. I'm going to leave that dark gray in there. Okay, so color step number 4 will be a tack down line. Now the tack down line is if we were going to cut in place. So I have the bottom of the butterfly fabric. I have that with the woven already attached to the back. Cut in place, we will place our fabric just over the butterfly bottom. Make sure we're centered. I've tried to make one of these straight lines. Let's just fold back on one of them, shall we? And I'm going to put that one right in the middle of the wings, and then put my fabric so that I have the design centered over that little base. I'm going to use that dark gray just to tack this down. A couple pieces of tape here would be your friend. So color step number 4 was what's referred to as a tack down line. The first line that went underneath was the placement line, showing us exactly where to put this fabric. And then once we've got that fabric in place, and whoo, I went rogue there, but a couple pieces of tape would have been our friend. And then this bit, we tack down the piece, and in applique, there's a couple ways to go about this. We would now go in and we will trim the excess out. Now, remember I said Leah was going to join us? Well, this is where her little demo will come in place. So while I trim this out, how about you guys wander off and, well, actually, don't go too far. I want you to watch Leah's sweet demo on how an SVG file could be your friend here.
Hi, Leah from my sewing room here. I am helping Anne out today with a wee little project. She is doing Kimberbell Digital Dealer Exclusives embroidery stitch sampler that's being released in March of 2024. And this particular design includes some fabulous SVG files. So I am going to show you how you could use those SVG files in an easier manner. And if you wanted to make many, many, many of this project, how you could save yourself some time trimming applique in the hoop by cutting your applique pieces on the Brother ScanNCut. So products that we'll need to help handle that. First of all, you'll need a Brother ScanNCut. Current model is the Brother SDX 325, which is the one I'll be using. It is Wi-Fi enabled and all around a great little machine. It comes with the fabric mat, which is the mat we'll be using to cut our fabric. And then personally, I really, really enjoy cutting fabrics with more interesting shapes with the rotary auto blade kit. So we've got the rotary auto blade kit here as well. This comes with a mini rotary cutter blade that will cut curve shapes so much easier than the standard fabric blade that comes with the machine. Other items for prep, we'll be using Applique Fuse and Fix. This is an OESD product that we can adhere to the back of our fabric prior to cutting, and it's got a paper backing that protects the other layer on it, and it turns your fabric into essentially a sticker, which is so cool because then you can get it exactly where you need it in the hoop and you won't be worried about it lifting and moving as you stitch it down. Great little product for you to have on hand for these types of things, especially in the more detailed cuts where you want them to sit just right. So without further ado, we'll do a little bit of fabric prep and get our SVG file into our machine in a way that we can use all of our different scraps of fabulous Kimberbell fabrics. So first up, I'm going to prep my fabric scraps and make sure they're not all wrinkled from being in my scrap bin. Then our Applique Fuse and Fix has a very bright white shiny layer. That is the paper backing. And then a layer that's got a little more sheen and a bit of texture to it. That is the glue layer that's going to go on the back side of our fabric. Your OESD Applique Fuse and Fix does come with instructions for iron temperature and time that this needs to be pressed, but it is a very quick, short little press. You'll want to let your pieces cool before doing anything else with them. Once they're cooled, you'll see that that backing is adhered to the fabric when you lift the paper. We're going to leave the paper adhered to the fabric for now, and when we go to load this into the machine, we'll take that off and not cut through the paper layer with our rotary auto blade. Next up, we're going to just briefly talk through what the SVG files will look like if they're loaded directly onto your ScanNCut, and then I'm going to show you a tip for managing those SVG files using Canvas Workspace. I have loaded the designs onto a USB. Oftentimes, Kimberbell designs come directly on USB, so you'll be able to just plug this in and find your SVG files. Go retrieve data, USB, you'll navigate to the file you're looking for. The Kimberbell SVG files, when they're loaded on to the machine directly, any of the shapes that are included will be in the same file, and they are generally grouped. So as it stands right now, for this particular file, I have a heart, the top and the bottom of a butterfly, and I would like all three of those pieces to be cut out of different fabrics and potentially down the road, maybe different numbers of each of these. So if they are grouped, I am unable to move these around to account for the different sizes of scraps that I have. And it's not ideal in my personal opinion. If I was cutting all 3 of those pieces out of the same fabric, this grouped file would work absolutely fantastic. So, as I am unable to work with these pieces individually, I'm going to approach this problem slightly differently. I'm going to go back and hit the home key, and we're going to import these SVG files in a slightly different manner using Brother Canvas Workspace. If you would like to see how to activate and connect your Brother Canvas Workspace account to your Brother SDX 325, check out this video here. I have opened Brother Canvas Workspace on my desktop computer or your laptop, whatever system works best for you. This is the desktop application of the program. There is also a web-based application. I find the desktop version simply fantastic to use. The SVG files provided by Kimberbell can be found once you've copied them off your USB thumb drive or CD drive, however your Kimberbell files have come to you. And in here, we can import an SVG file into the Canvas Workspace display. You'll be navigating through your computer. To whichever file you are looking for. Just the same as on your machine, I've opened the same file. So this is the smaller size for the 5x7 hooping of the embroidery stitch sampler design. And when this particular SVG file is open in Brother Canvas Workspace, if I select any single one of those objects, I am able to move it independently from its friends. So I can select the heart and drag it around using that left click button. I can select each of these wings. And this little bit of editing work right in Canvas Workspace will turn this into a true FCM file, which is the proprietary file type for the Brother ScanNCut. And to help me remember what that file type is when I'm looking for files later on, FCM, I think of it as fabric cutting machine. And easy enough to know that those files will be compatible with my ScanNCut. So now that I've done this, I've just moved these designs around. I have not changed anything about them, such as their size or orientation. If it would make more sense to see butterfly wings uppy downy instead of turned on their side, there is tons of editing tools along the right-hand side of the Canvas Workspace screen. I could go into Edit and specify a rotation angle and hit Enter to rotate any object that I want. Just going to rotate these 90 degrees and hit Enter on both. Maybe we'll rotate the heart too, because now that we're on it, I want all of my pieces to be facing a way that makes more sense to me. This is also your opportunity. If you knew you were wanting to make many of these shapes, or you were making a whole set of this embroidery hoop sampler for friends and family, all the same colors, you could go in and select any one of these pieces and duplicate out to fill the page. Quick and easy with appropriate spacing in between each one. Any changes you've made in Canvas Workspace that you don't really love, just hit undo and you'll be able to carry on. So now that I've moved these pieces around, I'll be able to cut each of them out of a different fabric and make my embroidery stitch sampler just as cute as I want it to be. At this point, if you know you want to be able to come back to this later on, we could save as. And this will save in the location that you were just in. It's going to save a Canvas Workspace project file, which is a project that can be edited again in Canvas Workspace. And you'll see the name up at the top. And then it's super simple. If you're ready to send this to your machine, you've done the edits you want to do, you've opened up this SVG file and turned it into a proper FCM file, we can hit the export FCM file transfer under the file menu. You can transfer the FCM file via the internet. And this file that I've just created has been sent to the registered ScanNCut to this account. Back at our ScanNCut, it'll be super easy to open this design. We can go retrieve data. And this option here is retrieve the Wi-Fi data that we have sent from our Canvas Workspace account. And it opens up that file directly with it being ready to carry on and edit. You'll note now, each piece, when selected, can be moved independently. This ensures that I can get each piece cut out of the scrap of fabric that I want it to be cut out of. So we'll load up our mat and make some magic happen. As I prep my mat with fabrics, I'm going to ensure the fabric side is down against my fabric mat. This is the fabric mat that comes with the machine. It is much tackier than some of the other mats, so it's going to help hold these fabrics in place as we get going. And it doesn't really matter where on the mat you place this, but you will want to adhere these down when the mat is flat on the table. I'm just going to gently place these, and we'll come back for better placement in a moment. As I mentioned earlier, also going to switch to the rotary auto blade. The rotary auto blade comes with a blue blade holder on the top and like a mini pizza wheel or a mini rotary cutting blade in the bottom. There's a gray flap in front of the blade holder that will lift to release whichever blade is installed. And then with the brother label facing towards you, the rotary auto blade holder will be installed. Closing the flap once more. At this point, I am ready to load my mat. So that nice arrow at the top will indicate the direction the mat wants to enter the machine. And we'll use the mat load key on the interface. This will pull the mat in ever so slightly and let it get started. I'm going to do a couple more things on screen here before we actually hit go and cut. So I would like to know exactly where this fabric is so each piece of this project can land on top of fabric and I don't run the risk of cutting into my mat. And I'd also like to make sure that, you know, it's all working the way I want it to. So the blue square on this screen is a background scan. This is going to take a picture of the mat as it is with whatever is on it. Once I hit start, the mat will pull through the machine and take a photo. Once the background scan is complete, I can move each of those pieces in my file on top of a piece of fabric And these fabrics still have the backing paper on that applique Fusion Fix. That's just so they're not sticky going through the machine, because they are essentially a sticker on the back. So that should make things roll pretty nice. So once I'm happy with my placement, I'm going to hit OK. I'll tell the machine what I am wanting to do. In this case, I would like to cut. And like all good embroiderers and sewists, I'm going to do a test to make sure this is working as intended. The test is going to open a tiny little piece. Oftentimes with curve shapes, a round circle is best. And we want this to cut on top of fabric as well. So I can use the little arrow keys to move it around. And we want it on fabric with the same thickness as what we're cutting with. All of the fabrics today I'm using are Kimberbell Basics. So I'm not worried about them being different thicknesses or cutting differently. And they all still have the backing paper on their applique Fusion Fix. I'm going to hit OK. And when I hit the Start menu, the machine is going to come and do a test cut of just that little round circle at the very beginning. It will give us an opportunity to check that it is cut nicely before carrying on and cutting out our butterfly wings and our heart. And just like that, I have cut out a small purple test circle. With that sticky backing, I'm going to be able to put that wherever I deem necessary. But knowing that it cut nicely, I am going to be quite happy to hit Start again and carry on. If my test cut was not successful, I could hit Test again. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, your piece is nearly 100% cut. There's the odd little thread to trim just to release it when you're using the rotary auto blade. But super easy to cut cute little wings. Perfect hearts. And tiny little butterfly wings. Now that I've got those shapes cut out once, I'm able to reuse this file over and over again. So I'm going to cut a few shapes out for Anne so she can carry on with her embroidery hoop sampler. Thanks for letting me join your video, Anne.
Alrighty, well, thanks, Leah. That was awesome. Really appreciate her popping in and doing that for us. Now, she so kindly left me with the pieces. So here's the bottom of the butterfly, SVG version. Leah's got sticky on there, and what we could do is just put those little bits in the bottom. So Leah left us with that bottom of the butterfly, but as you can see, you got a 2-for-1 here. You got applique trim in place or applique SVG. So typically you would peel those little guys off, and then you would lay them down in those original lines that we stitched, the placement lines. So placement either for the big piece of fabric or placement in this case where we would put down the pieces that we cut on a digital cutter. I think in this case we used the Brothers ScanNCut and they came up lovely, but I've already got my stitch in place pieces down. And I'm going to go ahead with those. So this is color step number 5, and I'm going to switch out here to the navy thread, the dark blue that I had earlier. You will find in your printed supply list the colors that we've used so far in month 1, 2, and now in 3. I try to overlap them as much as I can. So color step number 5 is the satin stitch that's going to go all the way around those. All right, here we are, color step number 6. I am going to go ahead with that navy thread. We're just stitching out my thread broke. Well, dang. Just a learning opportunity, right? Just going to back my machine up to where the thread broke. Back up about 10 past there. Just see here. Love for you all to think that somehow I'm immune from the fun and games of broken thread, needles, other pieces. But I am not. But such is life. We're just going to carry on. Just going to rethread that machine. This isn't an integral part of anything, this placement line, so I'm not going to put a knot or anything fancy in there. Just going to rethread and go. Okay, so color step number 6 was the placement line, and again, Leah left me with those beautiful blue wings. We could just peel them from the paper, put them on here, but I already had this color in mind, and I'm going to carry on with the stitch in place. And there's a pattern here. Just going to fold my fabric in half on one of those pretty designs. I'm going to center it here in the middle, hold it, open it. I'm a little bit rogue. Really should be using that tape. Never commit your fingers to an operating embroidery machine. The results can be catastrophic for your finger and the machine. But the line is almost in. Since I have to change thread anyway, I'm going to take the opportunity to put the color that I want to stitch those wings out, which is the sort of a lighter blue, has a bit of aqua to it. It matches the pattern in that fabric. That's why I chose it. That color number will be in your supply list. But remember, go ahead, pick whatever suits you. Right, so when you do this, the trim in place, after the tack down line, you have to trim away all that excess. Or if you happen to have a cutting machine, you could just have dropped those pre-cut pieces in there. It's lovely of Leah to come do that for us. The average embroiderer might not have one of those, but if you want to be above average, do go see your local dealer about a ScanNCut. I know that I love mine. I know that Leah loves hers. I know that we're going to be offering more classes on how to use them, get the most out of them. So if you are enjoying these classes, this program, do give us a like on that video. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel. And do share the details with your friends. That's what a good friend would do. Okay, I'm quite pleased with my placement on those wings. I already have the thread for color step number 8 in there. Let's go ahead. Well, there we go. We've completed the butterfly. And we've moved on to the next portion, which is our chenille heart. So, let me grab my fabrics for that, change my thread out to a nice red that matches, and we'll get going. Okay, well, there we go. We've been through color step number 8. This is color step number 9. I've put a burgundy in the machine. The fabric I'm using for the heart is more burgundy than red, so let's do it. Okay, color step 9 was placement 9. And remember, Leah has done that gorgeous demo for us, and she left me with the heart. And I think since we did the applique trim in place, I'm going to use that lovely heart that Leah cut out for us. I'll put that in there. It's got a little stickum on it, but in case I didn't stick it well enough, maybe I'll also slop in a piece of tape, just in case. I'm going to repurpose this one. So I'm pretty, well, maybe I better check. When you get them pre-cut, you want to make sure you get them right on top of that line. And remember, I said we could stitch through the tape, but I've got some stickum on that, and I'm going to use that too. So the next stitch out is typically the tack down line, and I'm going to try it. See, it'll let me know how close I've got my heart. Well, nothing to be ashamed of there. I got that heart in there quite lovely, but I am going to remove that tape before we get to the next step. So I'm just going to support the applique just in case in the stitches. Get that tape out of there. Get that little piece off of there. Got pretty good placement. So the next part's a satin stitch. So let's go with that. Okay, well, color step 11 was a beautiful little decorative stitch. Not really a wide satin stitch like our butterfly. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take 3 layers of hearts. And we're going to stack them up, and then we're going to tape them in place. I actually think what I pulled for this was a burgundy linen. So we're going to center them over the top of that heart. Then we're going to tape them down so the machine doesn't catch. Now remember, the heart was going to be the chenille tape. So we're gonna just make sure that they can't move. Good chunk on the bottom of the heart. Piece at the top of the heart. We could put some on the sides, but I think we're good. The design's going to start in the middle. If I thought it might come in from the side, I would definitely tape those down as well. So, color step number 12 asks for a lighter color, and I'm definitely going to switch to a color that shows for you guys. And later it's removed, so definitely want to make it a little easier to see. I think I'll do the white. All right, color step 13, I'm switching back to the burgundy for the top stitching. All right, now we've just finished the stitch lines on color step 13. And what we're going to do first thing here, we're going to trim the hearts around here. Now in the instructions, we could have trimmed that a little sooner. But it works at this juncture as well. They have you trim before we put the center lines in. I've grabbed the applique scissors. They're a little heavier than my little squeezy Kimberbell scissors. If you just have small scissors, what you can do is, if your scissors don't like the bulk, is just go in and trim one layer at a time. If you have heavier scissors and they don't mind the bulk, you can go in and cut all of them at once. I'm going to just do the top layer here. Now, what I can tell you is precision cutting is not really that important in this step, because at the end of the procedure here, this chenille's all going to be rough, tumble, and fuzzy. So don't stress too hard about trimming this. If you would like to go quicker, thicker, bigger scissors are your friend. We don't have to have precision edges, like I said. But a heart shape will be great. Turn everything so it's easy access. So now we have a lovely heart trimmed out. Then the next step is to remove those white basting stitches. So remember when I told you that you want to switch that to something a little easier to see? Yeah, we're going to remove those white stitches now, and you can see they're quite large basting stitches. So you need a nice, small, tip, sharp. You can go run around, cut those pull them out, whatever makes sense for you, whatever you find easiest. Yeah, the hardest thing about removing those stitches at all is just trying to keep everything in the camera so that you guys could see what I'm up to. Alrighty, so I've got basting removed. Now, the next tough part is here, where there's channel stitched here, and you can see how this outside edge is loose. What we want to do is in the channels between the stitching here, we're going to go in and grab those top 3 layers and not digging into the bottom layer. And we're going to just cut through the middle of those lines. There's a couple different ways of doing that. I'll walk you through a couple of them. I'm going to just grab these Kimberbell lovely fine tip scissors and we'll trim through there. There's a few other things on the market that might help you. We have in hand here the Olfa Chenille cutter. Now, each side of this cutter has these lovely little bars, and the little teeniest bar would fit through this heart, and that would allow us to use the chenille cutter. So let me just show you what that's going to look like. I used to, back in the day, we chenilled everything, and this was fabulous. So you can see that there's different widths of little slots here, and right now the blade is set in the largest one, but I'm going to turn it so that the cutting edge is in the smallest. And then what we would do here is you're going to slip this little piece here. It's just a little plastic tongue. You slip it in and just slide, and you can see it perfectly cut through those pieces in a hurry. You pick the size blade by what will easily fit and center. I think I could go up one size to what on the cutter's called medium. I think it will fit in there. Yeah, it centers it and it holds it right in place for you, which makes cutting these super simple, as you have just seen. Now, we're going to do lots of different classes in the coming year. One of them is going to be a full-blown version of chenilling and the options available to you, which of course would include this cutter. So stay tuned for that. Do go in and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a thing. Now, in the instructions for getting your chenille to fuzz up, and that's the thing, if this was a chenille blanket quilt, you would go ahead and throw this in the wash and let the machine do all the work for you. It also says that you can fluff it with a nail file or a stiff brush. I brought in a fingernail brush. It'd be really good to fluff that with. But when the fabric is dry, it takes a little longer. Now, I don't know if you can see sort of the confetti of red lint happening here. But we could brush like this. Little circular motion. You know, back in the day when we used to cut off our jeans and make shorts, We didn't worry, we cut it off, we pulled some thread in it. They looked great. So there's a lot of red lint forming here. It almost looks like a bleed on the screen, but it's actually just red lint. Red's one of those colors that's not very stable. And I'm not sure which red fabric I used on my original one here, but it was a print, so it's quite pink compared to this because the back of the fabric was white. But there's another little product. It tells you in the notes that you could go ahead and add a little bit of water here. Well, that relaxes these fibers and allows them to fluff. You can see I can just continue to brush away what looked like bleed there. It's just lint. But we can just use the fingernail brush, an old toothbrush that still stiff enough for this. But to make it easier, a little bit of water. But to make it super easy, this product is my friend called Flatter. Flatter is terrific. It will take creases out of the fabric you might buy, and you got that center crease and it's a really hard line in the fabric and you can't get rid of it. If you spritz it with Flatter and then iron it, it doesn't make the fabric stiffer or thicker or starchy, but it relaxes the fibers and allows you to get those creases out. Now, there's some really interesting notes on the back that you might want to read first. And what I'm going to do instead of water, I'm going to use Flatter because it really relaxes the fiber. And I'm not going to do too much right now here because we want to move on to the next embroidery. But a little bit of Flatter here in the middle, and then back in there with my brush. And getting those fibers relaxed with a little bit of water or a little bit of Flatter if you have some or you want to try some. I highly recommend it, but just pulling the lint out of there. They soften up really quickly and it starts to look fuzzy much sooner. Now, there's a few long pieces of thread that are kind of hanging out there. You can absolutely go in and give this a little haircut if you got some long unruly pieces that you just want to tidy the edges up. Absolutely go in and take those out. But there we go. It's a little hard to see on camera, but quite fuzzy, really sweet. So there you go. Chenille in a hurry. And now I'm just going to brush my hoop out. Get rid of all those little linty bits. And we're going to head back in and we're going to finish off this side of the hoop. Let's get a little bit more embroidery under our belt. So the next color step is 14. And it's a green. So I'm going to take that red out. Take that burgundy out. Still got a bit of red lint there to deal with, but that's okay. And I'm going to pick one of my greens. Kind of a nice soft green. Kind of coordinates nicely with that original piecing block. This is just going to be a nice set of leaves and stems. Okay, color step 15 in the instructions is for a lovely little pale pink flower. I think I'm going to go a little off script there. And I think I might go with this with the darker pink. Or maybe I'm going to go with the pale peach or pale orange. It's technically pale orange in my supply list. But if you can't go a little off script, what is the fun in making it yourself? So, as I said, we'll supply you with the entire thread list of what we used in our samples. At least we'll give you a starting point, but feel free to go off script and do what makes you happy. Now, this is really important. Do not miss this step. We are going in and we're going to change the bobbin from that light pre-wound white bobbin to the water-soluble. And if you hadn't joined us in a previous video, one of those is water-soluble, one of those is not. How can you tell? Really, you can't unless you were to grab the tail of the thread and wet them. Then you would know. But I put a WS just in a Sharpie marker on this bobbin, top and bottom, just so that I can't pick it up and misinterpret it as just plain white bobbin thread. And certainly wouldn't want to make a project that needs to be washed using it. The first time it went through the wash, it would dissolve. So that would be a problem. So I'm going to use that lovely lighter orange for this flower rather than the prescribed pink. And the water-soluble bobbin thread in color step number 15. All right, so color step number 16 is the larger flower. And I'm going to step out of character there, and I'm going to use this color, which is, its name is terracotta. It's a much darker, kind of rusty orange. I'm going to use that in place of the dark orange. But remember, light, medium, dark, that's subjective. It all depends on what's sitting right beside you. So here we go. I'm going to use terracotta. That's dark orange. Okay, color step 17. Really important here. We take the water-soluble bobbin out, replace it with a regular thread bobbin. It's still a lightweight pre-wound bobbin for embroidery. And we're going to do the middle of this flower, and then there's a decorative stitch arch that's going to stitch over here. So you want something that you're going to enjoy in both locations, or you're going to have to stop the machine in the middle of its embroidery and make an adjustment there. I'm going to use a lighter green. I think that's going to look really nice against that terracotta. It's going to look nice in this little corner. So essentially, I'm designing as I go. What do I feel like now? This is a sampler. It should be made out of colors that you love. It should be something you want to hang on the wall in your sewing studio or in your kitchen, wherever it would make you happy. So there we go. I'm going to do the middle fill. Color step number 17. I'm going to use a light green and regular thread in the bobbin. Okay, color step number 18 is the center of that orange flower that I did earlier. I have found one of our previous projects color. It's kind of a nice rust. I think that'll look great in the middle there. So I'm just gonna go ahead. Color step 18 was the fill on that flower and the wee arch in that little rainbow. So our next one, it shows in the pattern as sort of a blue floral wreath. I think I'm going to go a little off script there, and I believe I'm thinking pink. I think I'm going to do pink. We have one more part to the arch. I'm gonna go completely off book, and I'm using darker purple. Joy of making your own things is you can make them suit yourself, suit the receiver of the gift. Okay, so that was color step 20 of 21. Now the instructions have us release the fringe on these flowers, but what I'd like to do is finish the embroidery and then go back to step number 41, 41 in your instructions where we release that fringe. The next part here is to go ahead color 21, which is that dark gray that we had used earlier for the lettering and for that outside baseline. So that one, I'm going to go back to that same color, that dark gray. And I'm going to recommend all the things I did when we did that first set of lettering. I'm going to switch my bobbin from white to either dark gray or black, something that matches the lettering color that you're going to choose to use. And I'm actually also going to add topping across the entire top here. I think that's in your best interest. Bringing in about a 6x8 piece. Going to just secure it across the top here. I know that the lowermost lettering here will be just in here and just below the butterfly. So there's some writing across the top here. So we want to make sure we cover that. So I grabbed myself about a 6x8 piece of stabilizer. That should pretty much cover the top. And then I am grabbing a couple pieces of tape. We don't want the foot to grab. get caught under the topping. So topping is just a water-soluble stabilizer. And in my opinion, when you have micro lettering, it just improves the quality when you add that. Don't forget to change the bottom. That bobbin I'm going to change out again to something dark. Going to use Prewound Black. Bobbin Weave Bobbin. I sometimes also have dark gray, so. Whoop. But I just firmly believe from experience that that is going to increase the quality of that lettering. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna let that stitch away. The first part here is on the butterfly, its antenna and the body. Its tail. I don't want that to get stitched in somewhere inappropriate, so I'm just gonna slip in there, take that out. Don't do it while the machine's running. Well, and there you go. We have completed our stitching. Meet me over at the cutting table. We're about ready to finish our project up. Step 40 and 41 are the ones that are going to release the fringe for us. And then we're going to fit our project into the hoop. So, remember, adding the topping was not part of the instructions, but I think from my experience, my life experience, is that we could really use that topping when we're dealing with micro lettering, which these little words are definitely in the realm of what I would call micro lettering. And remember, maybe with the magic of television, you won't have to watch all of this, but before I remove that, I'm going to go in and trim out all those little teeny tiny jump stitches. And they're just travel stitches from one area to the other, from one letter to the other. And like I said earlier, some people don't even see them. They don't know what I'm talking about. That stitch does not bother them. But if you're like me and you see that stitch and it drives you bonkers, now would be the best time to remove it, in my opinion, because you've got the topping protecting the fabric. And this makes it a little nicer for the scissors to slip in and out. And because I am finished with this, I am trimming in the air and I'm using my finger in the underneath of the hoop to help push that area up so I can get a hold of it. Because at this point in time, I am not worrying about distorting the hooping at all. I'm just trying to get the tip of my scissors under those little tiny stitches and hopefully not nipping into anything I shouldn't be, like the letter next to me or the fabric. See, it's really hard to see when there's a jump stitch on a little tiny eye between the eye itself and the dot. Kind of fills that space in so it doesn't look like a small eye. Alrighty, well, hopefully through the magic of television that wasn't too painful for you watching me pick those little stitches out and pull out the little remainders of stabilizer. These little micro scissors and these little tiny sharp tweezers, they're fabulous for getting into those little nooks and crannies. I can see there's a little bit of stabilizer still here in this lettering, but I'm not worried about that because I can remove that with a wet Q-tip. So, little bits of stabilizer and those really great tweezers. Pardon me, they're just fabulous. I like to get under there and tear towards the lettering. It tends to remove all the stabilizer quite quickly and simply. And if not, erase it with a wet Q-tip. Tail there. Beautiful. Quite happy with that. All right, so if you use a red fabric and there's any actual bleed when you add the water or the flatter to the chenille, and you see that around, oftentimes just a second rinse will take that right away for you. Now we've got to deal with these fringe flowers. So I'm going to just take this right on out of the hoop. In your instructions, this is 4041. What we want to do is we're going to go to the back of these two flowers, and where you see these large circles, we need some water there. So if you're stitching along with me, time to go get yourself a little bit of water and a little cotton swab, and we'll deal with that fringe there. All right, so if you're working along with me and you have found yourself cotton swab, aka Q-tip, and a little bit of water, we're just gonna lob that in there. I'm just gonna let the water sit on there and dissolve that water-soluble bobbin thread we put in earlier. And I'm just using the cotton swab kind of like a little dauber, just spooning a small amount of water onto the back of those flowers. Now that water-soluble thread, there's different ones on the market, but I'm quite pleased with this one. It's from Wonderful, like my Prewound Bobbins, and it is called Rinse and Gone. Now, what I found a bit different about this versus some of the others, it's a wee bit heavier, which means it takes a little longer to dissolve. Fair enough. But it's stronger, so it's not breaking like some of the other company's thread. So there are a few embroidery techniques out there where you're going to put water-soluble thread through the needle and the bobbin. And in that case, you don't want that thread easily breaking. And I think that Wonderful has kind of got the right recipe and the right weight. So I'm not sure you can see it quite on camera, but what I can see back here is the stitches are starting to release. You can see there's a gap here. That's where it used to be joined. Here we go. More gap. That's the bobbin thread letting go. And you can just kind of do a gentle scrub with the cotton swab. You won't be hurting those stitches, but you're just working a little bit on that. These flowers are quite nice and large, and it's easy to see what you're doing and what you're about. Okay, so I can see that all of that bobbin thread has been released on this flower. So now I'm just going to go in and scrub a little bit on that light, that orange one here. You can feel and see the stitches release when the bobbin thread is completely dissolved. Now those middles are what's gonna anchor down the petals that we're about to see on the front. So here we go. I know now, because I can see complete open circles here and there, that those have been released. So what I'm going to do, flip to the front now, and I'm actually using the dry end here for a little more friction, and I'm just going to rub gently, not too fiercely, and just have those stitches that I released come to the front, and they're going to leave a really sweet 3D flower. Now there's a bit of a water stain around here where it's wet. If that happens to stay in the fabric and you can see that line, the easiest way to get rid of a water stain is with water. I would just perhaps rinse gently the whole piece. Running water, quick soak in a sink. Not the wash machine or anything quite that serious. Okay, so you can just lift it up a little closer to the camera. You can see that this one's still flat, like we stitched it, but you can see this one has 3D petals. Super sweet. So I'm going to release both of them. So if you're looking for more fun ideas classes, please do join us either on our Facebook stream. We've got years of videos on there. We started during the lockdown and pandemic to teach a ton of free things on our Facebook. And then we joined up on YouTube. We have a load of classes, demos, all sorts of great tech tips in both areas. We'd love it if you joined us there. Had a look at some of the others programming that we do. And all we ask is that you give a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, because why wouldn't you? I see a thread there that's going to make me lose it. So I'm going to take it out of there. It's just a little travel thread. Remember, I'm one of those people who doesn't think they belong. So there we go. Now you can see both of our little flowers have been released. Fringed flowers, everyone. Aren't they adorable? Machine embroidery has my heart. There we go. Machine embroidery has my heart. Chenille. So we've got that nice fuzzy chenille effect. We've got the fringed flowers. We've done some beautiful decorative stitch embroidery. We've got Redwork, which realistically, if you use any other color, the name becomes black work, red work, blue work, purple work, whatever color suits you. We have piecing in the hoop, which super precise. You've got great crisp corners here. Applique in the hoop. We shared with you how to use SVG files. If you're interested or already own a digital cutter, you could join the movement to have things pre-cut for your applique embroidery. Or you can cut in place as we taught. So here we go, our embroidery sampler. There was the one from earlier this morning. Now, if you happen to have a rogue petal that's longer than the rest, you actually can go in and trim those even. Sometimes you get one for whatever reason that's a little longer than the others. But here we go. So similar set of colors. Then in my second sample, I went completely rogue, entirely different set of colors. Similar, but not the same. This one I did navy outline. This one I did the white outline. Looks quite different. Just remember to suit yourself. That is the joy of making things on your own. Now, our last step is to place the project inside an 8-inch embroidery hoop. The basting stitches from earlier today, they're still here. And because we did this in 2 hoop halves, there's 3 separate lines. The original one I did all in one singular hoop. There was 1 circle there. It's very hard to see on screen because I used white. There we go. Nice 8-inch embroidery hoop. You might have those at home. I know we definitely have them in the store. So what we're going to do is, if you can see the circle from the back, you could get this placed starters that way. If not, I would like to have the tab on the top, and I'm just kind of looking to see where my hoop is by pushing gently. I'm just going to move a little bit. That wasn't centered the way that I thought it should be. Let me just turn that around. And you can just use those lines to help you place your hoop. A little more to the bottom here. When you're happy with your placement, push that all the way through. Get that little lock screw a little tighter there. I'm not unhappy with that placement right there. Now, what I would like to suggest is once you're happy, we can have this tightened up here nice and tight. You can either hang through that screw, put a piece of ribbon there and hang it on a hook on the wall, whatever you like. Now, all of this in the back, what are we going to do with this? Well, you could trim it away. The stabilizer myself, I might get in here and resting my scissors against that hoop. And this is just a stabilizer. Just trimming it even with the edge of that hoop. Just to remove that as something bulky that served its purpose. Stabilizer is one of those things, you know. It's an expendable product. When you're finished with it, you throw it in the trash, but without it, you're just going to be making a mess that'll end up in the trash bucket anyway. So when you're new to embroidery, it kind of hurts your sensibilities a little bit how much stabilizer seems to go in the trash. But if you thank it and appreciate it for the job it was intended for and has done for you, I don't feel as bad as I used to. And I just know that I couldn't have saved every little end. And I like a fresh new batch of stabilizer for each project. It's not, there's a few times I don't mind using the bits and pieces for other things. Sometimes little accidents occur while you're stitching. I've often used a corner of a cutoff like this as a little stabilizer band-aid if I'm in the middle of something and rehooping is not an option. There we go. So I'm going to take all of that away. Now I am just left with some fabric and some of that Fusible Woven on there. What I might do here is grab a heavy thread and a hand needle and just a running stitch about 1/4 of an inch from the hoop all the way around. And I would draw that up into the inside here. And that'll pull all of that nicely to the back. And then I may trim that down. You could trim it even here. I'm not sure that I would like that 100%. You'll go in and remove those basting stitches that you can see. Unless they don't bother you, then leave them. Leave them right there. You kind of add a little something. Then those little stitches we used earlier, those little tiny elbows. Remember those were our registration marks? They've done their job. They can be removed as well. And there you go. Lovely. Now you've got to try so many different techniques. If you loved the chenilling, Kimberbell has an adorable chenille in the hoop fruit stand hot pads. They are adorable, I'm telling you. I can see a lemon, a peach, a strawberry, pair of cherries here. You can see a few more of the designs. Apple, pineapple on the back here. Pears, peach, strawberry, cherries. Oh, the chenilles on the pineapple's interesting. Definitely worth checking out because you now know how to do chenille, so you might enjoy something a little larger and a little more fun for your kitchen. Oh, sweet. Now we have these flower in the bench pillow. Mayflower's bench pillow. 3D flowers, lots of fun. Some applique in the hoop you might enjoy. There's a whole machine embroidery version of chenille with all the alphabets. Wouldn't that be sweet at a wedding? Little neutrals with chenilled Mr. and Mrs. on the front. You could totally pull that out every year for your anniversary. What a sweet reminder of your wedding day. Or you could share it with your friends for their weddings. You can make your own set of words, autumn, initials, anything you could personalize with chenille letters. That's adorable. The K is somewhat done in a kind of a fun spring style. The JOY would be down here in Christmas fabrics, hanging off your mantle. So many great ideas there. One of our much larger designs is this whole quilt. Oh, so delightful. There are plethora of techniques in here, and you have all the skills you need. So there we go. Now, remember, if that water stain stays, just rinse the whole thing. Transfer color staining on red sometimes happens. So, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. That was fun. Just remember, there's a lot you can do with your little project. Make it your own. Change the colors, change the fabrics. There's no bonus points for making yours look exactly like mine or exactly like Kimberbell's. Unless you're so in love with them, they have to be the same. Then by all means, I hope you enjoyed today, and I hope I see you for next month. What are we doing next month? Ooh, I don't know. It's a surprise. So thank you for joining me. I am excited to have you with us. Please, if you are only here for this month, you haven't missed too much. We have January and February, and this is March. The program is a whole year. If you sign up for the whole year, and we haven't given away all of our What's the Buzz keychain kits, that's the bonus design for signing up for the whole year. We'd love to have you for the whole year. There's a lovely little price reduction for taking the whole year with us. There's the free design What's the Buzz keychain as a bonus for signing up for the year. And if we haven't given all the kits away, we had some free kits for that particular project. So you didn't have to go looking for all the parts and pieces. They came to you in one perfect little kit. So have a look at our year-long program. There's no deadline, and we are pre-recording every month's event. So you'll have a sneak peek at the rest of the year as those videos pop up and are available. So do subscribe to the YouTube channels or a Facebook channel so that you get notification that the things are up and ready to go. So again, I'm Ann Dale, my sewing room, Calgary, Alberta. I hope to see you soon. Take care.